Many, many children of school age are not in school. Out of compassion for those kids, our churches have begun in their neighborhoods to provide schooling at a fairly low cost. They're connected with the church, so they're unashamedly Christian schools. We all have a commitment to the Great Commission. The gospel of Jesus is the one thing that's necessary.
Thank you for joining Mercy Today. How do mercy and compassion break down barriers and change everything? How do they bring hope? Be inspired as our guests share about the life-changing, soul-impacting work through the ministry of Mercy, Inc. and its partners. Here's your host, Dr. Dan Critchett.
Well, here we are again. Very glad to welcome you to this episode of Mercy Today Radio. You know what we get to do? We get to take a look at what God is doing around the world, across the continents and across our great country, and we get to tell the story of how compassion changes everything. And if you let that phrase work its way around in your mind, you'll understand how compassion opens the door. That's the model of mercy ministry. Compassionate services, meeting human needs, and then opening that door to building relationships. It's a wonderful strategic plan, and that's what we get to talk about and we'll get to tell about over and over again. So we get to tell the world about the great work of mercy and, as the introduction said, the partners and friends of mercy. God's got a lot going on around the world. So as I look at what God is doing, it is fascinating to me to see the many ways He is using to reach people. Again, back to it's meeting their needs, it's building relationships, and then bringing the good news of the gospel to them. And that plan is sometimes applied in regions, sometimes in whole nations, and sometimes in villages, and sometimes in families, and sometimes just one-to-one in individuals. It could be safe, clean water wells that provide that life-giving to the village or the area, the family. It could be seeds in farming training, agricultural stuff that helps them sustain their life. It could be medical care. It could be literacy, a lot of things that God is using through Mercy and His partners. Today, we're going to talk about education, about using a tool to reach people by planting schools. And we're going to hear about that with our guests. We're going to talk with a missionary to Liberia. He and his group are called to plant schools, which is a little bit new to me because I've heard a lot about planting churches. I'm all in favor of that, well aware of how that works. But planting schools, and from there to plant churches and to proceed to get on to the work of making disciples. It's a great plan. We'll hear how it works and the results that they're getting. So how does it work, and what results are they getting? So, well, let's ask him. We don't have to fly to Liberia. He's actually right here. The title of today's episode is Planting Schools and Churches in Tough Soil. I think that's probably a good description. We're going to introduce our missionary friend in just a moment. I want to welcome you to the discussion. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you can listen in a lot. I want you to lean in and open your heart. Listen to the end. We've got some special things toward the end of our show. So in studio today, actually, that's why we don't have to fly to Liberia, because Gordon Elliott is right here. Not only a missionary, but he's the field director in Liberia for Evangelical Church Missions. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So they are a partner and friend of Mercy. And again, the episode for today is called Planting Schools and Churches in Tough Soil. Gordon Elliott. Gordon, thanks so much for coming in. You didn't fly from Liberia just to be here for this show, right?
No.
Okay, you were here already. So
just from Oregon City.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, and welcome to Mercy Today Radio.
Thank you.
Ready to go?
Okay.
We got some questions. So I want to get into the top of our discussion guide here, because we always shape this ahead of time so we have some idea where we're going. But I'll surprise you with some other questions and things that you'll say something, and I'll say, I think we want to hear some more about that. So tell us, I think it's always fascinating as we talk to missionaries and pastors and other ministry people, how did God lead you to the mission field in the first place?
Well, I don't have a very exciting story, I don't think. I'm a pastor's kid, and my father always emphasized missions.
Yeah, okay.
We always had lots of missionaries that came through our churches, came through our home.
Yeah.
And as a young child, I decided that's what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Really?
And I think probably in junior high, the Lord confirmed that to me through Isaiah 6:8. I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom will I send?
Yeah.
Go for us, then said I, here am I, send me."
Yeah.
And so that's my story.
Yeah.
We went to Bolivia first before going to Liberia.
Okay.
And I think that was, again, because of missionaries. We met some missionaries from Liberia who'd come to our church. Bolivia. I'm always mixing up the two.
Yeah, sure.
Came to our church from Bolivia and interested me in Bolivia. They invited me to come spend some time, which I ended up doing when I was in college. And so that's how we got to Bolivia, and then from there, the doors opened up eventually to go to Liberia.
Yeah, excellent. I'm so glad you said that yours is not an exciting story, because God calls people from anywhere and everywhere, and all kinds of people, ordinary people, who were, as I say in some of my God stories, I was minding my own business one day, and then God came in and tapped me for something, right? And so what a great testimony, though, too, because the influence that you grow up in, I'm not a PK, but my kids are pastor's kid, and you mentioned that, and there are MKs too, missionary kids. So your kids, do you have kids?
Yes.
Yeah, I know you do. That's right. We talked about that. So
Yeah.
your kids are MKs.
Yes, we have 4.
Missionary kids. Okay. All right, great. So what do you think that you have in common with most other missionaries?
I knew you were going to ask that question because it's on your list, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a tough question to answer.
Okay.
I think, the obvious answer is we all have a commitment to the Great Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe the gospel, that the gospel of Jesus is the one thing that's necessary.
Yes.
And it's the first step towards solving Liberia's problems. And then beyond that, I was trying to think, and I don't want to come across here sounding wrongly, but I think for those of us who are stuck at it,
Mm-hmm.
we have an understanding that the thing we're called to is not immediate results. You have to look at the long-term picture.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, part of it for us, that we realize you just have to stay in there. You remember you're called, and you hang in there.
Wow.
Over the long term.
That's so fundamental, so basic. Because I think if a person has these starry ideas about going to a place and everybody's going to fall down and receive Christ, and they're going to build a church and everything is going to be fantastic and wonderful. I wonder what cartoon book they were reading, when they thought that. But it's faithfulness, isn't it? It's just hanging in there. It's knowing your call, right? It's knowing that God has selected you for that work.
Right. And so you hang in there. There's a lot of times you think, why am I here? I'm ready to go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's that idea that God's called me, and here's where He's put me.
Right. Right. Would you say, not that any of us know, would you say that that's a common thought that most missionaries will have experienced at some point? Why am I here? I want to go home.
Everyone I know.
Really?
I think.
Okay. Well, that's fair, because we need to understand that missionaries, they got struggles. They might, be ones that we feel are particularly blessed and called and everything else, but boy, there are those tough times when you just think, why? And particularly when you have, I know of missionaries whose children have gotten sick, or where there's persecution and death, in the family, and boy, that's going to challenge your call, challenge your commitment, challenge your thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, your work primarily is in Liberia, is in the capital city of Monrovia. Is that correct?
Yes.
In and around, stretching out. So I told you before we started that if I was shown a map of Africa with just the boundaries and not any names, I couldn't pick out Liberia, honestly. So help us. How can we find where is Liberia on the map of the continent of Africa?
Okay, if you think about Africa on the Atlantic side.
Oh, I see.
And at the bottom of that kind of bulge that sticks out there, right where it sort of bends in, Liberia is right there.
Okay. I got that. Okay, perfect.
So we're above the equator. We're about
Okay.
6 degrees, between 6 and 7 degrees
Okay.
in latitude.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you what the general condition of life is in that area. And we'll start with that as soon as we get back from the break. So don't go away, folks. We are coming back.
I'm Brad Swinford with Salem Concrete Paving. It's a privilege to partner with Mercy Inc., who provides hope to people around the world by meeting critical needs and introducing people to Jesus. I know that through Mercy Inc., I'm investing in God's kingdom as they spread the love and gospel of Christ around the world. So please join me in supporting Mercy Inc. and Mercy Today Radio by praying or going to their website at mercytoday.global. Thank you.
This is Doug Hoffman, Executive Director for Mercy Inc. Today I want to take you back to Africa. I want to talk about Bridge to Reading in particular. Bridge to Reading is a program where we teach adults how to read and write in their own language. And as we do that, we see a difference in their lives because all of a sudden there's more dignity in the home. There is more respect for the wives, for example, because they can't read. They're not considered worthy at that point in time. As they begin to read and write, then they can do their budgets. They can provide an income. Also, they can read the Bible. And if you think about it, as they start to become spiritually aware and they're actually able to take the Bible and make a difference in their lives, not only for their kids, but for their husband and for themselves for eternity. It is a powerful, powerful tool as we bring Bridge to Reading, teaching people how to read and write in their own language across the world.
Now's the time to become a part of something greater in our community. You and your organization can partner with Mercy Today and change the lives of thousands around the world. Our team of business professionals can also come alongside you and help you grow your organization to maximize your impact. Our goal is to help you increase your quadruple bottom line: people, planet, profit, and purpose. Consider being a sponsor of Mercy Today. Visit our website at mercytoday.global.
This is Doug Hoffman, Executive Director for Mercy Inc. Just thanking you for listening to mercytoday.global.
Welcome back. We are talking to Gordon Elliott, missionary to Liberia and the field director there. So lots going on. And the title of our show for today is Planting Schools and Churches in Tough Soil. So, Gordon, we were just about to talk about what is the general condition of life in the region where you are in Monrovia and some of the outskirts and rural areas from there. What is life like there?
I think I would describe it as primitively modern. Our streets are full of cars. We have electricity when it's on, and yet many, many people in the city do not have electricity.
Yeah.
We have water when it's running, but again, many, many people do not have water in their homes, and they have to go out to, there are neighborhood wells, pumps, where you get your, pump your water. Everyone has cell phones. You know, the internet is available all over the city, and yet we can't afford it. And people can't afford to use the phones very much. Poverty is the main factor there.
So limitation of resources and access, just poverty.
Yes, just poverty.
Yeah. What would you say, based on that picture, thank you for that, the greatest needs of the people there, other than the spiritual, because that's why you're there, but as you insert yourself into that culture, what do you see? What are the greatest needs of those people?
Well, because of the poverty, that brings a lot of things, and healthcare is almost. There's a little bit, but not like you need.
Sure.
Education, the educational system, the school system, as the last president described it, as a mess, and not much has changed since she made that statement several years ago. Yeah. Many children of school age are not in school. And it's a fairly low percentage of those that are in school that will actually finish school. So that's an issue.
Oh, okay. So what happens if they do and if they don't finish? So let's say first they finish whatever school is available for them there. What does that enable them to do? What does the future look like for them if they're able to finish school?
They might go on to university if they can pass the entrance exams.
Okay.
And we were, a couple of years ago, I guess, we were at the graduation of the university, and one of the students simply made this point. He was the student speaker, and the president of the country was there in attendance, and he said, basically, Mr. President, we're here graduating, but where are the jobs for us?
Yeah. Okay.
And that's an issue. So I can get out of school, but what am I going to do? Because there's very little opportunity for employment.
And what happens for those who do not finish school?
They probably end up in the selling, either as a street vendor or in a market.
Okay.
But that's not a very lucrative.
Right.
It can be, for some people, it can be enough to sustain a family. For others, it isn't.
Okay. Right. So I have a question here about the difference. What I wanted to get to was the difference of education, and that's where you become a part of that, right? Because when you're planting schools, people, certain percentage of them want education. They want a chance. They want. Before you answer that question, I got to get this question in first, because if I don't say it, it's not written down, I'll lose it. You know how that goes. So it's this. These sound like tough circumstances. It's a difficult place to live if you're accustomed to living in America. And where I'm going with that is, if you were to take somebody out of one of our communities and plant them where you are working, they might think, yeah, no, I don't think so. I'm going to go back home. It seems to me that the difference for a missionary, and for you in particular, let me know if this is correct, the difference is that you feel a call and a calling to that. You're there. You're going to adapt. You're going to make it work. You're going to do what you can while you can. You're going to trust God to get you through the tough times. And that's the difference. You're not going home because you're called there. That's in your heart and your family. But a typical American, uprooted out of their community, their housing, what am I trying to say, development or whatever, they would say, no, this is not for me. I can't stay here. The calling is the difference. Can you remark about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Because when things don't go like you would like them to go, even just the physical stuff. I mean, forgetting even the ministry, just the house we lived in when we first came in, huge puddles on the floors, constantly dripping. And I thought, what have I got my family into? South America was way better than this.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is that sense of, this is where God has brought us, and He'll be faithful to us. And that doesn't necessarily end sometimes the questioning, I'll be honest. Maybe it should, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest.
Right.
Sometimes there's still question, do we miss His calling or something? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's what keeps us there.
Yeah. And that's powerful. And God's been nurturing that in you since your childhood as a PK.
I suppose.
Pastor's kid. Yeah. Okay, so tell us about, well, you made a comment on our phone call a while back about, you said Liberia is Christianized, but not Christian. Help us understand the difference.
Right. Political Liberia was founded by freed black slaves from the States, or free blacks who never were slaves, but they were founded by them. There was this movement in the early 1800s to send Africans back to Africa was the idea. Anyway, so those that went back did take with them Christianity, and I believe that's basically they were the first ones that brought Christianity to what's now Liberia. And that group of people became the ruling class, and the religion just was a part of all that. And so today, you talk to people, probably 80% of Liberians will say they're a Christian. And they know the language, they know the things to say. You go to church, you throw in your offering, you dance, you sing, you pray, you maybe testify. But when you go out the door, all that is kind of on the shelf until next Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
And their lives, for many people to say they're Christians, their life does not back that up.
Yeah. So you become part of that culture, in the best way that you can as an American. And your strategy is to plant schools. I'm really curious about that. So how do you go about that? How does that look?
Okay. Yeah, we work in Liberia with the Liberia Evangelical Mission, or LEM, and LEM is a denomination which encourages its local churches to start schools.
Oh, okay.
There are not enough schools to go around
Sure.
in Monrovia, and then you get out country and rural areas. There are villages that have absolutely no school at all for the children, and so out of compassion for those kids, our churches have begun in their neighborhoods to provide schooling at a fairly low cost, so that the kids in the neighborhood have an opportunity to go to school, and so that their parents can afford to pay, because it's not free, and they are indeed expected to pay tuition.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the plan. There hasn't been any central plan. It's been individual churches stepping up to that challenge.
Yeah.
And our two schools in Monrovia are up through 6th grade. Out in the countryside, where we have another 4 more schools at this point, some of those may only be through 2nd grade, 1st grade. Some may just be starting out with just a kindergarten.
Yeah. But are they at that level? Are they learning literacy? Are they learning to write and read their own language? Is that kind of the fundamental, what they're starting with?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's all in English.
Okay.
All the schooling is in English.
Okay. Regular English? Like if we saw something in Liberian English, could we understand it?
If you saw it printed out, you would probably understand it.
Okay.
But if you heard it spoken, you may not. It depends who you're talking to.
Okay. But you give them that basic tool then, that life tool of literacy, right? I mean, is that where it kind of begins there? Okay.
And they do. And they, for good or bad, because not everyone will agree with this, the kindergartens are, can I say, academic. I mean, they are trying to teach the basic starts reading and spelling and so on in kindergarten.
And then as they go up, what would be a standard curriculum? Are they learning something that will help them get employment, or to start a business, or to get around, get along, move up in society? Is that part of the goal?
With our schools at this point, okay, like I said, we don't have anything that's beyond grade school at this point, beyond 6th grade.
Right.
So the emphasis really is on spelling, reading, math, Liberian history, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Which I think you've got to have. Again, the question becomes, once they do graduate, they're going to have to find some creativity as graduates for jobs. I mean, that's a political issue the government has to deal with.
Yeah. And so how does faith or discipleship or connecting with a church, how does that work in with the work of the school?
The schools are all, okay, first of all, like I said, they're connected with the church, so they're unashamedly Christian schools. And while I'm sure we can do it better than we're doing it, but part of the goal is to include Scripture, Christian values, Christian worldview into what the schools are teaching. And it provides evangelism opportunities. Our one school, we have Muslim kids. We get a lot of kids, too, that come to these schools that their families aren't particularly Christian beyond name. And so it's an opportunity to help introduce these kids to what Christianity is all about, what it means to know Jesus, and hopefully be able to reach the parents through that as well, it's not exactly PTA, but they do have these parent things. Sure. And so that's the goal. I'm sure we can do it better than we're doing it at this point.
Yeah, we can probably all say that about everything that we're doing in ministry and otherwise. Yeah. So I have some other questions I'd like to ask about, but we're going to put that over into the AfterWords portion, so that'll be available on podcast. But for the radio timing, we're at the end of our clock here, and our engineer is counting down for us. So this is Gordon Elliott, a missionary to Liberia, and planting schools and churches in tough soil. And so, Gordon, I just want to thank you a lot for being here. And if folks, if you have questions about the work in Liberia or Gordon, go to our website, MercyToday.global. Otherwise, we are here all the time. We've got lots of programs for you to listen to. We've been talking, I said it, Gordon Elliott, planting schools and churches in tough soil. Gordon, thanks so much for coming in today, and God bless you as you go back to Liberia and continue the work that you are called to do.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back with more Mercy Today right after this.
How do you multiply your time, talent, and treasures? By investing in Mercy Today. Whether it's going on a mission outreach halfway around the world or sharing your insights and experiences with others in our local community, our team of business professionals can help you multiply what God has given you. We can help you grow your organization so that you and your fellow work associates can utilize your talents for even greater causes as you multiply your resources to do even more. Join us and become a sponsor of Mercy Today. Visit our website at MercyToday.global. Have you been looking for new ways to grow your organization and have a lasting, eternal impact? Mercy Today has an amazing team of business professionals that have managed small businesses to large corporations, and we want to share that know-how and experience with you. We're also committed our lives to sharing the gospel with compassion and serving the practical needs of communities around the world. Partner with us and become a sponsor of Mercy Today. Visit our website at MercyToday.global.
So it was great having Gordon Elliott here talking about the work in Liberia. Good stuff. If you have questions about our discussion today or about the work in Liberia, go to our website, MercyToday.global, and let us know what's on your mind. Give us some feedback, ask some questions. We'd love to connect with you. Go to the Contact tab on our website and give us a clue about what you have in your mind, and we'll be getting back to you. So a lot going on in the world today. God is up to a lot. We want to invite you to be a part of that. Businesses can partner with this program and fund missions. Go to MercyToday.global and click on the Business Resources link. Now, I want to thank you for listening to Mercy Today Radio, telling the story of how compassion changes everything. So I'm your host, Dr. Dan Pritchett, wrapping up this episode. And until next time, may God help you be a part of what He is doing in our world today. Join us on the show again and find out where in the world we'll be going next. Find all of our shows at MercyToday.global. So God bless you, my friend, and goodbye for now. So now we have the afterwords. We had the before words and the during words, and now we have the afterwords. This is kind of the spillover, the overflow of what we had been talking about. We turn off the clock here in the studio, and we're able to not have to abide by the rigid radio time, which we have to do, and it's all good. So now I'm in the studio with Gordon Elliott, Liberia Field Director with Evangelical Church Missions, and the topic that we're talking about is planting schools and churches in tough soil. And we have a couple of things that we want to wrap up with, Gordon, but maybe if I could go back to just the title. Now, you didn't say that the soil was tough, but when I'm thinking about, giving a title to an episode, I kind of think, well, what did I hear from you, as we were having our conversation? Can you tell me a little bit, tell our listeners about in what way would you say that the soil is tough for planting schools and churches?
I think for us, one of the big obstacles that's there is because, and this really still a question you asked earlier about being Christianized but not Christian.
Right.
And that in itself, I think, is one of the obstacles because people often they don't want to hear certain things. And if a pastor will actually challenge them in his preaching, for instance, sexual standards in Liberia and in the church are very, very low and contrary to biblical teaching. And if you try to teach about that, people will leave. Literally, they will leave, and they'll take their offering to another church who won't say anything to them. I mean, that's just one illustration. But the culture, there's so many things in the culture that are opposed to the gospel.
Yeah.
And so it does make it tough in that sense. And then part of it, too, just the poverty. It's hard to get a school going because there's no money. Even a simple building costs money. You've got to pay teachers, and parents have to have money to pay tuition and so on.
Yeah.
So all of those are factors that do make it a tough place in that sense.
And with that challenge comes, I know a lot of missionaries and a lot of pastors and churches are in a situation where they say, we want to pray God to help us do something that we couldn't do without him. And it sounds like that might be your situation, to pray for God to do something that you couldn't do.
Yes. And we feel that very much.
And you experience then his faithfulness and his provision for people and for funding and for whatever it is you need for carrying out the school and the church planting. And you do theological training and pastor training. Just learned that during our break here. And so, and you spend a lot of time developing the curriculum and the lessons, and pastors and pastor candidates come to you, to your home, and you give them that Bible training. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. It's probably the thing I do that I enjoy almost the thing I enjoy the most anyway. We have a lot of young people, both men and women, that are interested in knowing more about the Bible. Mm-hmm. And they haven't had much opportunity. Even some of our pastors have had probably no formal training. Mm-hmm. And so what we're trying to do is provide an opportunity for people in the city that can come, and we do, it's like in my mind, it's like an informal Bible Institute level. Sure. And we have, I usually have between 20 and 30 students that sign up for each material. We discovered that if we would offer them help for their transportation so they can come, that we got a whole lot more students than we had before. Yeah. And just because transportation is expensive and people don't necessarily have the money to get from the other side of the city to where we meet. But it's good. I really enjoy it. We have a good group of students, and it's mostly the same guys coming back and repeating, materials, and taking new materials. And I find that I just enjoy that because I think the Lord's using it. You see growth in their lives. You also see some things that happen that you think, now why is that happening? That shouldn't be happening in their lives.
Sure. Yeah. Back to the thing about Christianized but not Christian. So I know there are cultures and denominations where you have the externals. You go to church, you sing the songs, you sit down and you stand up and you listen and that kind of thing. And maybe you bring a tithe or an offering. And when you come with a gospel-centered message and urging people and challenge people to live a Christ-following life, a lot, and I've heard this said out loud, and maybe a lot of it is going unsaid, and that is, well, I'm going to church. What else is there, right? And that's where you enter in with maybe to take something from Romans 12, where Paul says, I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, which is acceptable to God, right? Your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Whoa, now we're talking about something totally different.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, to help our guys to see that, and then to be willing to let God make those changes. Because it's not easy. They have a whole culture, and again, I mentioned the sexual thing, or maybe I didn't do it on the air.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
But because Liberian standards are very, unbiblical. Okay, it's okay. You just move in with your guy, your girl, and you live together for a while, have some baby. That goes wrong, fine, you move on to somebody else, and or husbands, it's not uncommon. Husbands have the gal on the side, and even for a wife to have a guy on the side. And so you confront people with the truth of that what Scripture says about being faithful and being married and all that kind of thing. And it can be very difficult to hear that because your whole culture is telling you that's not necessary. And we just have recently gone through about a 2-year battle with one of my students over this issue, and some deception involved and so on. And about a 2-year battle with him to convince him that he needed to change his life when it came to relationship to his woman, excuse me, that's what they say. And it wasn't just his woman, it was also the one on the side he was having besides her. And between, this pastor and we became involved because he was one of my students and so on. And it was about 2 years till he finally came to the place of making that surrender and being willing to do it God's way. Yeah. And they've just recently have gotten married since we've been here in the States, so I wasn't at the wedding, and what this pastor tells me is they're doing great. And he finally understands why we said and did what we did with him. Yeah. Because he wasn't real happy with some of the discipline he was being placed under and so on, because he had been a leader in the church. And but now he understands. And that's the kind of, it's the impact of Scripture. But it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. We'd like to think it would. And in some cases it does. Right. But often it doesn't, and there's that battle, and you're battling culture and so on and so forth.
And it seems important from a pastor's role. And a teacher, you're helping him become a pastor or a better pastor. It's easy for the the model of Scripture that we have for a lifestyle. It can come across as legalistic. Oh, you're not following the rules. You're not doing everything right. But truth is, and you know this, and everybody else in the studio here knows this, and I know this, that the Christ-following life, the surrendered life, is the very best life you could ever ask for. And it's not legalism. It's an invitation to wholeness and the abundant life. And so when they come to understand that, like you were describing, that's a whole new life. And that's what we have to offer. Thank you. So I want to ask, your family is there with you. And what is your work in Liberia? What does it mean to you and your family personally?
Okay. Well, first of all, my family, I'm married and soon be 39 years. We have 4 children. And 2 boys, 2 girls. And they're all adults, unlike most missionaries, God has blessed us with the fact that we have half our children in Liberia and half our grandchildren are in Liberia as well, just down the road. So that's pretty special. Our youngest son lives with us, and he and I together in our schools, we do... It's a combination Bible and art class. And I say it's really funny because my son's an artist. He is. He actually is. He's an artist. He's very talented. I, on the other hand, am not. And I'm partially colorblind. I can't draw. I can't do any of those artistic things, but I'm the art teacher. And the 2 of us, in our schools in Monrovia, it's just 1 day a week, and it's been a lot of fun. But working with the kids, and it's a chance to show them the love of Jesus, and give them a chance to do some things that they don't get to do. Just coloring is not something they get to do at home. And then we do my artwork with them is really simple. It's sort of like Sunday school crafts is what I am to do. So anyway, so my son, but he is an artist, and so he works with that. And then my older son, who is married, and he's the one that's 4 of our grandchildren, and he particularly works with the schools more than I do, actually. He's an educator, and that's his focus, and particularly trying to help with their curriculum. There is a government-mandated curriculum, but it's not very good. And he's trying to figure out ways to help them be able to improve on that, still do what the government says they have to do, but then move above and beyond that. So it's a tough job he's got, but I think he's good at it, and I think with the Lord's help he'll get it done.
Yeah.
And then his wife has a particular burden for the younger girls. Again, you'll think I'm fixated on the sex thing, but I'm in Liberia. Culturally, it's as if girls are there to provide, to let the boyfriend have his way, okay, with her, and to provide children, and that's kind of her value. And so my son's wife is working with what we call the Shine ministry, working with a couple of groups of these kids. It's kind of sort of tied into the school, but sort of with the church. And anyway, but helping these young girls is aimed at young teenagers through. It's aimed through mid-20s, kind of that age range. But to try to help them understand their value is in Christ. It's not in having babies. It's not in having a boyfriend. But their value comes in Christ. Jesus died for them. He loves them. They're made in his image. And that's where they need to see themselves, and to escape this pressure from society to just give themselves to a boyfriend so that they can get stuff from him. And yet parents will tell girls that, you want to go to school? We're not paying for it anymore. You go find yourself a boyfriend, and he'll take care of you. And it's, anyway. So his daughter is involved in that as well.
Yeah. So you've got...
his wife.
His wife, yeah. You got a family thing going on. It kind of bonds you together. I mean, you're in Liberia together, each serving a role, filling a part, and doing that together. Not many missionaries have that.
Right.
Where family members are there with them. So as we finish up here, Gordon, how about a story, kind of a human interest story that maybe shows or explains what you do there, or somebody from one of your schools or churches or a pastor or something?
Yeah. Let me just show you a little bit about one of our pastors. If we had been talking more on the church end, we'd tell you that the reason why we're there is to make disciples,
right?
Because that's what Jesus said we're to do, and that's not just making converts, but make disciples. Exactly. And one of our pastors was a young guy, and he had his woman, like we were just talking about, and then they got saved. And our church was trying to plant a small church in his village. And so he'd gotten saved, and he began to feel called to ministry. And so he went to the pastor of this little church that was Big Star, the guy that was overseeing it, and told him, what should I do? Well, the pastor said, well, the first thing you got to do is get your personal life in order. You can't be a pastor if you're not living right. And so he instructed them they needed to separate for a time and really be separated. And he would check up on them to make sure they were. And then after, I don't know how long it was, I've forgotten what he told them. But after that, then they could begin to plan a wedding and come together and have a Christian wedding. And it's like a new beginning, but on a Christian foundation. And so that's what they did. And not everybody will do that, but this young pastor, he gave his life to Christ, and he's a disciple, and he wants to do what Jesus wants him to do. And so they did that. They separated.
Yeah.
She was in agreement too, and she's been saved, and she's a nice gal. Came back together, and they got married, and trying to set things right that way. And they're as poor as could be. I talk about poverty in Liberia, and they're as poor as can be, and they don't always have enough to eat. Right now, they're trying to get a house constructed because where they're living, they got to get out. The landlord wants the house back, and it's been a struggle for them. But through all that struggle, there are people that kind of thing draws them away from Christ, because I understand that in a sense. If you don't have enough to feed your family, that becomes a pretty looming concern. If you love your kids and so on. But he has remained faithful through all that kind of thing. Sicknesses, they've had it in his family and his siblings, and his sister, after giving birth, was in a coma for I forget how many weeks, and just, all these things. But he has remained so faithful through all of it. And he comes to my class. He's one of my students that comes to class. And he's also actually now has enrolled in there's a Monrovia Bible Institute, or Bible College, rather, which is a solid place. And he's enrolled in there now, too. And I just think of him as a good example of what we want to see.
Yeah.
Because he's a disciple. He loves Jesus. He's going to do what's right, no matter what the pressures. And he has also been involved with us in our outreach, because Liberia, I say things are in English, that's the official language, but there's something like 16 recognized languages, 16 to 18 in Liberia. And he speaks one of those that the rest of us don't. And so it's been good. He goes along when we've made trips out into the country, and he's a good interpreter, and his heart is out there. So that's kind of what we want to see in our pastors and just in our church people, that desire to be a disciple.
Yeah.
So
being a Christ follower and all the ramifications, and again, I keep coming back to, and I say this to my people a lot, and that is the Christ following life, the transformed life is the best life possible in this world. So that's been great. Gordon, thank you very much for dipping into your family and your personal and your work, everything else. I think our people will be blessed by this. They'll listen in the heart of a missionary who feels called. It's not always easy, right? It's not always comfortable. In fact, usually not in some places that we serve. So again, this is the AfterWords with Gordon Elliott, planting schools and churches in tough soil. And that tough soil is in Liberia. And on we go. So that concludes our AfterWords and our podcast. So God bless you, my friend. Go to our website, MercyToday.global. Look around there, listen, respond, give us feedback, and we'll see you next time. God bless you.